In this chapter, let us dive into the very essence of becoming smarter every single day, not through sudden leaps of genius, but through consistent, intentional habits that shape the way we think, act, and grow. Imagine for a moment that intelligence is not a fixed trait, not a gift given only to a few, but rather a garden that needs care, water, sunlight, and pruning. Chapter 1. Every journey toward wisdom begins with a single step, and that step is the realization that intelligence is not fixed, not limited to what we are born with, but something we can expand daily. And when we truly understand this truth, our entire outlook on life changes, because we stop seeing ourselves as prisoners of our past or as captives of our natural abilities, and we begin to recognize that the mind is like a muscle that can be trained, stretched, strengthened, and nourished. And just as an athlete grows stronger with practice and repetition, the human mind grows sharper and more capable when exercised with purpose and direction. And so the first great foundation of becoming smarter every day is a shift in mindset, a recognition that smartness is not the privilege of a select few, but the inheritance of anyone willing to cultivate it. Intelligence is not a fixed gift delivered at birth and sealed forever. It is an evolving capacity, a garden waiting to be tended, watered, and expanded. Imagine for a moment a person who never questions, who never reads, who never reflects, and who never challenges themselves. Their mind becomes stagnant, like still water that grows cloudy and lifeless. Now imagine another person who asks, who wonders, who reads, who reflects, and who tests new ideas daily. Their mind is alive, flowing, fresh, like a river always moving toward new horizons. The first truth of becoming smarter is that you must see yourself as capable of growth, for without this belief, no habit will take root. From here we build the cocker, the framework of understanding that will guide us through the coming chapters. And this framework begins with the understanding that smartness is not about knowing everything, but about creating a lifestyle that turns every day into an opportunity to grow. Too often, people measure intelligence by grades, degrees, or memorized facts, but true smartness is the ability to adapt, to understand, to see patterns, and to apply knowledge in ways that solve problems and elevate life. A person who memorizes thousands of facts but cannot adapt to change, cannot solve challenges, or cannot connect with others is not truly smart in the deepest sense. For smartness is not storage, it is application. To become smarter every day, then, is to take small, consistent steps in building habits that refine the way we think, expand the way we perceive, and strengthen the way we act. It is about adopting practices that sharpen curiosity, fuel learning, deepen reflection, and create resilience. These practices may seem small on their own: asking one good question, reading one page of a book, pausing for 5 minutes to reflect, choosing to listen instead of interrupting. But like drops of water filling a vessel, they accumulate, and over time they transform the mind into a reservoir of insight and clarity. But why is this important? Because in a rapidly changing world, intelligence is no longer about what you know at one fixed moment, but about how quickly and effectively you can learn, unlearn, and relearn. The smartest people are those who can walk into new environments, face unexpected problems, and still find ways to adapt and thrive. They are not the ones who cling to what they once knew, but those who are willing to grow into what they must now know. Life is a constant teacher, and each day is a classroom, but only those who come ready to learn benefit from its lessons. To become smarter every day, you must choose to see every experience, whether joyful or painful, whether victory or failure, as material for growth. Every conversation can be a source of wisdom, every mistake a hidden lesson, every book a doorway into a new world. Think of intelligence not as a mountain to be conquered, but as a path to be walked, one step at a time, endlessly stretching forward. The person who believes that they are already smart enough will soon stop walking, and their mind will stagnate. But the person who humbly admits that they can always grow will keep moving forward. discovering new landscapes of thought and new heights of understanding. The smartest people are not those who boast of their knowledge, but those who remain teachable, who carry a childlike wonder into every encounter, who hunger for learning as if it were food for survival. They do not wake up asking, "What do I already know?" but instead, "What can I learn today that I did not know yesterday?" And in that simple shift of focus lies the power to grow daily. This first chapter, then, sets the stage for the habits that follow. Before we can discuss curiosity, reading, listening, reflection, adaptability, discipline, problem-solving, the company we keep, sharing knowledge, or humility, we must first anchor ourselves in the understanding that becoming smarter is not about extraordinary leaps, but about ordinary habits practiced consistently. It is about waking up with a learner's heart, going to bed with a reflective mind, and treating every moment in between as a chance to stretch the boundaries of our intelligence. The cocker of this book, the skeleton upon which the flesh of wisdom will be built, is the principle that intelligence is dynamic, expandable, and within reach of anyone who chooses to nurture it. You need not be born a genius, for genius itself is often only relentless curiosity, persistent practice, and disciplined application over time. So as we begin, let this truth sink deeply into your heart. You can become smarter every day, no matter your age, no matter your background, no matter your starting point. Your mind is not a container to be filled once and sealed forever. It is a living flame that must be fed daily, or else it dims and weakens. The journey we are about to take is not a sprint, but a lifelong walk, not a race to outdo others, but a discipline to outgrow your former self. Intelligence is not about comparison, it is about transformation. The smartest version of you is waiting ahead, built by the small, deliberate choices you make each day, choices that accumulate into habits, habits that shape character, and character that creates destiny. This is the first and most important step to believe in growth, to embrace learning, and to walk with determination toward the smarter, wiser, and stronger version of yourself that is waiting to be discovered day by day. Chapter 2. The first habit of smart people is curiosity, and curiosity is more than a simple interest in things. It is the very lifeblood of intelligence, the spark that ignites the fire of learning, the force that pushes the mind beyond the surface and into the depths of understanding. And when we speak of becoming smarter every day, it must begin here, with the willingness to ask, to wonder, to explore, to seek answers even when others remain satisfied with not knowing. For curiosity is the quality that transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary and turns every moment into a chance to grow, and without it, the mind withers into routine and stagnation. Consider a child eyes wide with wonder, asking endless questions about the world, wanting to know why the sky is blue, why the stars twinkle, why people laugh or cry. And though adults often tire of these questions, they are proof that curiosity is the purest form of intelligence, for it shows a hunger to understand, a refusal to accept appearances, and a drive to uncover meaning beneath the surface. The tragedy is that as people grow older, society often teaches them to suppress curiosity, to stop asking questions that make others uncomfortable, to accept the answers given, and to conform to the boundaries of conventional thinking. But the truly smart person refuses to let this inner flame die. They protect it, nurture it, and let it guide them into uncharted territories of knowledge and insight. Curiosity is not limited to academic knowledge or scientific inquiry. Though it thrives there as well, it extends into every area of life, into relationships, into culture, into self-understanding, into art, into business, into spirituality, into the everyday moments that most people dismiss without notice. For the curious mind is always alive, always observing, always asking, "What can I learn here?" And "What does this mean?" And "How does this connect to something else?" It is curiosity that drives innovation, that pushes inventors to create, that inspires artists to imagine, that urges philosophers to question existence, and that empowers leaders to seek better ways forward. History shows that the greatest minds, scientists like Einstein, shaped ER3. The second habit of smart people is reading. And reading is not merely the act of passing one's eyes over lines of text, but the conscious decision to feed the mind with the knowledge, experiences, and perspectives of those who have walked the paths of life before us. For every book is a doorway into another world, every page a mirror reflecting human thought, and every sentence a seed of wisdom waiting to take root in the soil of the reader's mind. And when we think of what it means to become smarter every day, we must understand that reading is one of the most powerful practices because it allows us to expand far beyond the limitations of our own personal experiences, giving us access to the greatest teachers, thinkers, and dreamers across centuries and continents. And the beauty of reading is that it condenses the struggles, successes, mistakes, and insights of another human being into a form that we can absorb in a matter of hours, meaning that in the span of a single book, we can live through lifetimes of trial and discovery without having to suffer each hardship ourselves. And this is the genius of humanity's written tradition. It is a bridge across time, allowing us to learn from those long gone and to prepare ourselves for challenges that we may not yet face. When smart people read, they do not confine themselves to one genre or one discipline, for they understand that the mind thrives on diversity, and just as a balanced diet nourishes the body, a varied reading habit nourishes the intellect. They read history to learn from the rise and fall of nations, philosophy to question the foundations of truth and meaning, science to understand the natural laws that govern the universe, literature to grasp the depth of human emotion and imagination, and biographies to walk in the footsteps of those who dared to shape the world. They do not merely consume words, but engage with them, question them, debate them internally, and test them against their own experience. For reading is not passive. It is a dialogue between the author and the reader, a conversation that stretches across distance and time. Reading sharpens the mind, stretches imagination, and provides tools of thought that can be applied to everyday life. And one of the greatest differences between those who grow smarter each day and those who remain stagnant is that the former are readers, while the latter are not. CATR4. The third habit of smart people is listening deeply, and while at first glance listening may appear to be a simple and ordinary act, in truth it is one of the most underrated yet powerful habits that separates the truly wise from the merely knowledgeable, because listening deeply is not just about hearing sounds or waiting for a chance to reply. It is about entering into another person's world, silencing one's own inner noise, and giving the gift of full attention so that understanding, not just information, can take place. And this habit is crucial because the world is filled with people who speak, but very few who listen, filled with voices competing to be heard, but scarce ears willing to absorb what is actually being said. And so in a culture where noise dominates, the one who listens deeply becomes rare, valuable, and wise. When we think about becoming smarter every day, we must acknowledge that much of the knowledge we need is already present around us, carried in the experiences, perspectives, and insights of others, yet so often we miss it because we are too eager to interject, too distracted to care, or too proud to pay attention, and thus, the ability to listen deeply transforms conversations into classrooms and everyday encounters into lessons waiting to be discovered. Smart people listen not to reply but to understand. They know that every person has a story, and in every story there is wisdom, if only one is willing to hear it. And so they approach listening with humility, curiosity, and patience, qualities that allow them to extract meaning where others perceive nothing. Deep listening means going beyond words and paying attention to tone, to emotion, to silence, and even to what is left unsaid, for communication is layered, and truth often hides beneath the surface of language, and those who cultivate this habit develop a sensitivity to nuance, an ability to perceive intention, and a capacity to understand context, which in turn sharpens their intelligence, because they are able to see more than the obvious. In leadership, this habit allows them to connect with others and build trust. In problem solving, it provides them with insights that others overlook. In relationships, it fosters empathy and closeness, and in learning, it multiplies their knowledge by transforming every dialogue into an opportunity for growth. Consider the difference between a person who merely waits for their turn to speak and one who genuinely listens. The first collects fragments of information and quickly forgets them, while the second gathers meaning, processes it, and integrates it into their understanding, and over time, this difference compounds into a vast gap in wisdom and effectiveness. But deep listening is not easy, and that is why it is rare. It requires discipline to set aside one's own ego, to resist the urge to dominate, and to focus on the other. And this is why smart people treat listening as an intentional practice, not as an accident. They slow down conversations, they ask clarifying questions, they reflect back what they have heard to ensure understanding, and in doing so they create spaces where truth can emerge. They know that people reveal more when they feel truly heard, and so by listening they gain access to insights that remain hidden from those who rush, interrupt, or dismiss. Moreover, deep listening also includes listening to oneself, not just the inner chatter of ego and fear, but the deeper voice of conscience, intuition, and reason, for within each person there is wisdom that often goes unheard because the noise of the world drowns it out, and the smart person learns to quiet their mind, to pause, and to hear their own inner guidance, which is just as vital as listening to others. When we step back and consider the role of listening in the greater journey of becoming smarter every day, we see that it is a foundational skill that connects and strengthens all the others. Curiosity drives us to ask questions, but without listening we cannot benefit from the answers. Reading fills us with knowledge, but listening allows us to test that knowledge against real-world experiences. Reflection requires listening inwardly to our own hearts and minds. Adaptability requires listening to changing circumstances. Discipline requires listening to reason over impulse. Problem-solving requires listening to the nuances of challenges, and building the right company requires listening to the character and values of people. Sharing knowledge requires listening to the needs of others, and humility itself requires listening to correction and truth without defensiveness. Thus, listening is not a single habit among others. It is the thread that weaves them together, the silent art that undergirds wisdom, and the quiet force that elevates intelligence. To practice deep listening daily is to commit to a lifestyle of learning from others and from oneself. To become attentive not only to words but to life itself, for life is always speaking, through people, through events, through successes and failures, through nature, through silence. And the smart person is the one who never stops listening. In every voice, they search for truth. In every silence, they search for meaning. And in every encounter, they search for the lesson hidden within. Over time, this habit reshapes the mind, softens the heart, and sharpens perception until wisdom becomes almost second nature, and the individual who once rushed to speak now becomes the one who waits, absorbs, and grows, and in that stillness they gain an advantage far greater than loud words or quick replies, for they have learned that the ear is the doorway to wisdom, and that the more deeply they listen, the smarter they become, not just for a moment but every single day of their lives. Chapter 5. The fourth habit of smart people is reflection, and reflection is the deliberate act of pausing, looking back, and drawing meaning from experiences, because life by itself does not teach, only evaluated life does, and without reflection we pass through events, conversations, successes, and failures without ever extracting the lessons they contain. But when we pause and think deeply, We convert ordinary moments into extraordinary teachers, and in this way reflection becomes one of the greatest tools for becoming smarter every day, for it slows down the rush of living and allows the mind to connect dots, recognize patterns, and store insights for future use. And the tragedy is that many people live on autopilot, moving from one day to the next without asking what they learned, what mistakes they repeated, or what truths were revealed to them, and so they grow older, but not necessarily wiser, while the truly smart person chooses to stop, to ponder, to analyze, and to transform raw experience into refined wisdom, much like gold is purified through fire. Reflection is not about dwelling on the past with regret or pride. It is about reviewing the past with honesty and extracting meaning, so that the future can be better. And those who cultivate this habit understand that each day offers lessons, but only those who reflect can see them. When we reflect, we engage the mind in a deeper conversation with itself, asking powerful questions like, "What did I do today that moved me closer to who I want to become?" Or, "What mistakes did I make that I can avoid tomorrow?" Or, "What did I learn from this challenge that can serve me in the future?" And each of these questions helps transform fleeting events into permanent wisdom. For without questions, reflection becomes shallow, but with the right questions, it becomes a source of clarity, direction, and strength. Reflection teaches humility because it forces us to admit that we do not always act wisely, that we sometimes let anger, fear, and/or pride control us, and that we have blind spots that need correction. But it also builds confidence, because it reminds us of victories, of growth, of lessons learned, and of progress made, and together humility and confidence create balance, which is the very foundation of wisdom. Reflection is also the guard against repetition of mistakes, for those who do not reflect are doomed to repeat the same errors over and over, while those who do reflect recognize patterns of behavior and learn how to break destructive cycles. Smart people schedule time to reflect because they know that in the silence of reflection, the greatest breakthroughs often occur. They may journal their thoughts at night, reviewing the events of the day. They may walk in solitude, letting their minds wander over recent experiences. They may sit quietly and replay conversations, examining what was said, what was meant, and what could have been done differently. And in each method, they are practicing the art of turning living into learning. Reflection deepens memory, sharpens awareness, and builds perspective. And perspective is what allows the smart person to see the bigger picture, to rise above the noise of the moment, and to make decisions not out of impulse but out of insight. A person who reflects daily begins to live with greater intention, because they carry forward the lessons of yesterday into the choices of today, and over time this creates a compounding effect, where each day builds upon the wisdom of the last. Chapter 6. The fifth habit of smart people is adaptability, and adaptability is the art of adjusting, bending, and evolving in response to changing circumstances without losing one's core purpose or values. And in a world that shifts with increasing speed, where technology transforms industries overnight, where economies rise and fall unpredictably, where social norms evolve, and where unexpected challenges appear suddenly, the ability to adapt has become not just a useful trait, but a critical necessity for survival and growth. And when we look closely, we realize that adaptability is in fact one of the clearest marks of intelligence, because it shows that the mind is not rigid, trapped in old patterns, but flexible, able to absorb new information, reconsider old assumptions, and find new ways forward. And those who refuse to adapt, who cling desperately to the past, who insist on doing things the way they have always been done, are quickly left behind, while those who embrace change, who remain open to learning, who reframe difficulties into opportunities, rise above the turbulence of life and move toward wisdom. Adaptability does not mean abandoning principles or losing one's identity. It means holding fast to what matters most while being willing to alter methods, strategies, and approaches when the situation demands it. And in this balance between constancy and flexibility lies the true strength of intelligence. For the smart person does not see change as an enemy, but as a teacher, guiding them into growth they might never have chosen voluntarily. Adaptability begins with mindset, with the recognition that change is inevitable and resistance to it is futile. For life never stands still, seasons shift, opportunities come and go, and those who live as if tomorrow will be exactly like today are setting themselves up for disappointment, while the smart person accepts change as a constant and prepares not by resisting it, but by learning to flow with it. Much like CTER 7, the sixth habit of smart people is discipline, and discipline is the invisible force that transforms dreams into realities, knowledge into mastery, and potential into actual achievement. Because without discipline, even the brightest mind and the greatest ideas collapse into nothing more than wasted opportunities. And when we talk about becoming smarter every day, discipline is the habit that ensures that curiosity is practiced consistently, that reading becomes a lifestyle rather than a hobby, that reflection is not forgotten in the business of life, and that adaptability is applied instead of merely admired. For discipline is the bridge between desire and accomplishment, the quiet strength that pushes a person to keep going when the excitement of beginnings has faded and when the ease of quitting feels tempting. Discipline is not glamorous, it is not loud or showy, but it is steady, patient, and persistent, and it shows itself in the small daily choices that compound over time into extraordinary results, like the decision to read 10 pages every night, to write down reflections before sleep, to exercise the body regularly, or to resist distractions that waste precious hours. And though each of these actions may seem insignificant in the moment, discipline ensures they are repeated, and repetition transforms habits, and habits transform character, and character shapes destiny. Smart people know that intelligence alone is not enough. They know countless individuals with great talent, great potential, and great minds who never reach their goals because they lack the discipline to focus, to finish, to endure. And so they treat discipline not as a restriction, but as a liberation, because it frees them from the chains of procrastination, laziness, and inconsistency, giving them control over their time, their energy, and ultimately their future. Discipline requires vision, because without a clear sense of purpose, it feels like drudgery, but when tied to a greater goal, it becomes a source of strength, and smart people cultivate this vision by reminding themselves of why their efforts matter, why their learning is important, and why their habits will pay off, and in this way they transform discipline from a burden into a choice aligned with their deepest values. It also requires self-control, the ability to delay gratification, to choose long-term rewards over short-term pleasures, to resist distractions in the moment in order to achieve fulfillment later. And this is why disciplined people often appear calm, focused, and resilient. They are not slaves to impulses, but masters of themselves. This does not mean they never feel tempted, tired, or unmotivated, but it does mean that when those feelings come, they act according to principle rather than emotion. And in this lies one of the greatest secrets of becoming smarter every day, that consistency matters far more than intensity. And that steady, disciplined effort, though less dramatic than bursts of inspiration, builds deeper, lasting growth. Discipline also creates freedom, though many mistake it for limitation, because when one trains themselves to live with structure, they gain the freedom to achieve, to create, to explore, and to enjoy life without being enslaved by chaos or regret. And so discipline is not the enemy of joy, but its foundation. For without it, life dissolves into wasted time, missed opportunities, and unfulfilled potential. Smart people develop discipline in practical ways. They set routines that guard their priorities. They create environments that minimize temptation. They break big goals into small, manageable steps. And they celebrate progress along the way to maintain momentum. and they understand that discipline, like a muscle, grows stronger with use. So they do not expect CHTR8. The seventh habit of smart people is problem solving, and problem solving is not merely the ability to find answers, but the deeper capacity to approach difficulties with creativity, patience, logic, and courage, because life is filled with challenges both small and large, and the way a person responds to them reveals the strength of their intelligence. For while many people see problems as roadblocks that stop them in their tracks, smart people view them as puzzles, as opportunities to stretch the mind, as stepping stones that sharpen skill and character. And this mindset alone sets them apart, because where others complain, avoid, or give up, they lean in, analyze, test, and persist until they arrive at solutions that work. And the truth is that every great advancement in history, whether in science, technology, philosophy, or daily living, was born from someone's willingness to face a problem and solve it. And so problem solving is not just a habit, but a necessity for growth. And it becomes one of the key ways in which a person becomes smarter every single day. Smart people understand that not all problems can be solved immediately, and not all solutions will be perfect. But they also know that with the right mindset and process, every difficulty can be improved, every obstacle can be reduced, and every challenge carries within it a seed of wisdom. And so rather than asking, "Why me?" when problems come, they ask, "What can this teach me?" And "How can I use this situation to become stronger?" And "What steps can I take right now to move forward?" And in these questions lies their strength, for questions open the mind, while complaints close it. Problem solving begins with clarity, with the ability to define the problem accurately instead of reacting blindly, because many people waste time solving the wrong problem, or addressing only symptoms instead of causes. But the smart person slows down, observes, gathers facts, and ensures they understand what they are truly facing before they act. And this discipline of clarity saves them from wasted effort. Once the problem is clear, they approach it with both logic and creativity, using structured methods like breaking it into smaller parts, analyzing possible outcomes, and weighing pros and cons, while also engaging imagination to think of unconventional. Chapter 9. The eighth habit of smart people is communication, and communication is far more than simply exchanging words. It is the art of connecting minds and hearts, of transferring ideas with clarity and empathy, of listening deeply and speaking effectively, because intelligence that cannot be communicated often remains hidden, unused, and unrecognized, while those who can express their thoughts clearly, confidently, and respectfully open doors to opportunities, relationships, and influence. And this is why communication stands as a cornerstone of becoming smarter every day. For every new insight we gain, every lesson we learn, every problem we solve becomes more powerful when shared with others, refined through dialogue, and expanded by collaboration. Smart people know that communication is not just about talking, but about listening, and listening is not about waiting for one's turn to speak, but about genuinely seeking to understand, to grasp not just the words but the emotions, intentions, and perspectives behind them, and in doing so, they gain access to knowledge, wisdom. Chapter 10. The ninth habit of smart people is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage not only one's own emotions, but also the emotions of others. And it is this skill that often separates those who merely possess knowledge from those who can apply it effectively in the real world, because life is not lived in isolation. It is lived among people, in families, in workplaces, in communities, and the ability to navigate the complex web of human feelings determines whether one succeeds or struggles, whether one builds bridges or burns them, whether one inspires loyalty or breeds resentment. And this is why smart people invest deeply in developing their emotional intelligence, knowing that raw intellect may open doors, but emotional maturity ensures those doors remain open. Emotional intelligence begins with self-awareness, the practice of looking inward honestly to identify what we are feeling and why we are feeling it, because many people are controlled by emotions they do not even recognize. Anger that bursts out as impatience, insecurity that hides behind arrogance, sadness that masquerades as indifference. And without awareness, these emotions dictate choices and damage relationships. But the smart person pays attention to their inner world, noticing triggers, acknowledging weaknesses, and accepting emotions without being enslaved by them. And this awareness allows them to pause before reacting, to respond with wisdom rather than impulse. From self-awareness grows self-regulation, the ability to manage emotions constructively, to stay calm under pressure, to remain steady in conflict, to resist the temptation of immediate gratification, and to channel feelings into productive action. And while this does not mean suppressing or denying emotions, it does mean mastering them, guiding them instead of being dragged by them. And in this mastery lies true strength, for it is easy to lash out, easy to panic, easy to collapse in despair, but it is far harder and far wiser to breathe, to think, to wait, and then to act deliberately. Emotional intelligence also includes motivation, the inner drive not fueled by external rewards or fear, but by a deeper sense of purpose, curiosity, and resilience. And smart people cultivate this kind of motivation, which allows them to persist when challenges come, to rise after setbacks, and to continue striving toward goals even when the path grows dark. And their emotional intelligence protects them from the discouragement that so often derails others. Equally important is empathy, the ability to step into someone else's shoes, to see the world through their eyes, to feel what they feel, and to treat them with compassion. And though some mistake empathy as weakness, it is in fact one of the greatest strengths, for it builds trust, deepens relationships, resolves, and creates opportunities for collaboration that cold logic alone could never. See Chapter 11. The 10th habit of smart people is time management. And time management is not merely the act of scheduling hours or filling calendars, but the much deeper discipline of directing one's most limited and precious resource, time, toward what truly matters. Because no matter how intelligent, talented, or ambitious a person may be, without the wise use of time, they will find themselves listed unproductive, exhausted but unaccomplished, and forever chasing after results that remain out of reach. And the reality is that every single human being is given the same 24 hours each day. But the difference between those who live wisely and those who live wastefully lies in how they choose to spend those hours. For while some squander their time on distractions, procrastination, or activities that drain their energy without bringing value, smart people treat time as a treasure to be invested carefully, guarding it from thieves of attention, aligning it with their goals, and structuring it in a way that multiplies productivity while still leaving room for rest, relationships, and renewal. Smart people understand that time once lost can never be regained, money can be earned again, opportunities may return in other forms, but a wasted hour is gone forever. And so they prioritize with clarity, asking themselves which tasks bring the highest return, which goals align with their long-term vision, which actions deserve their best energy, and which distractions must be cut away. And in this practice they rise above the trap of business that ensnares so many, replacing frantic activity with focused progress. Effective time management begins with awareness, the simple yet powerful act of recognizing where time currently goes, because many people feel overwhelmed without realizing how much of their day is consumed by unplanned interruptions, endless scrolling. Chapter 12. The 11th habit of smart people is networking. And networking is not about shallow exchanges of business cards or transactional relationships built only for personal gain, but about the genuine and intentional cultivation of meaningful connections that enrich both the individual and the community, because human beings are designed to thrive in collaboration, to share wisdom, to support one another, and to multiply opportunities through relationships. And smart people understand this truth deeply, realizing that success is never a solo achievement, but the result of countless interactions, influences, and contributions from others along the way. And so they treat networking as both an art and a responsibility, approaching it with authenticity, generosity, and long-term vision rather than short-term advantage. Networking begins with curiosity and respect, the ability to value people not merely for what they can give but for who they are, their experiences, their stories, their perspectives. And smart people approach others with a mindset of learning, knowing that everyone, no matter their background, has something to teach, some insight to share, some connection to offer. And in this humility they create bonds that are far stronger than those based only on ambition, because people naturally gravitate toward those who listen, appreciate, and uplift rather than those who simply take. At the same time, networking requires courage, the willingness to step outside one's comfort zone, to initiate conversations, to attend gatherings, to reach out to strangers, and to build bridges where none yet exist, because opportunities often lie hidden behind introductions that many are too hesitant to make. And smart people do not wait passively for relationships to come to them, but actively create them. Chapter 13, the 12th habit of smart people is resilience, and resilience is the inner strength that allows a person to endure hardship, recover from setbacks, and continue forward with determination even when circumstances seem overwhelming, because life, no matter how carefully planned, will always deliver challenges, failures, and unexpected storms. And what separates the truly smart from those who are only momentarily successful is not the absence of failure, but the ability to rise again after it, stronger, wiser, and more determined than before. And resilience is not about ignoring pain or pretending that struggles do not hurt, but about facing them honestly, embracing the lessons they carry, and refusing to allow them to define or destroy one's future. And when we examine the lives of history's greatest innovators, leaders, and thinkers, we see that resilience was the constant thread running through their journeys, because all of them faced rejection, criticism, and moments of despair. Yet instead of surrendering, they persevered, transforming obstacles into stepping stones and setbacks into setups for growth. And so resilience becomes one of the greatest markers of intelligence in action, for it reveals a mind that is not only sharp but also strong, not only curious but also courageous, not only adaptable but also enduring. Resilience begins with perspective, with the ability to frame difficulties not as permanent prisons, but as temporary challenges, to remind oneself that pain, though real, will pass, and that even in suffering there is something to be gained, some skill to be developed, some wisdom to be uncovered. And this perspective gives birth to hope, and hope fuels endurance. For the resilient person knows that no season of Chapter 14, the 13th habit of smart people, is creativity, and creativity is not confined to artists, musicians, or writers, but is the universal ability to imagine possibilities, to connect ideas in new ways, to generate solutions that did not exist before, and to see the world not only as it is but also as it could be. And this capacity to create is one of the most powerful tools a person can cultivate if they wish to become smarter every day, because creativity expands the mind beyond rigid patterns and opens doors to innovation, progress, and discovery. And while many mistakenly believe that creativity is a rare gift reserved for a chosen few, the truth is that it is a skill that can be developed, strengthened, and applied in every area of life, whether in solving business challenges, nurturing relationships, raising children, managing resources, or even finding joy in ordinary routines. Smart people nurture their creativity by feeding their minds with diverse inputs, reading widely, engaging with different cultures, experimenting with new experiences, and allowing themselves the freedom to ask, "What if?" without immediately dismissing unconventional answers, because they know that great ideas are born not in monotony but in variety, and that the spark of inspiration often comes from unexpected places. A casual conversation, a walk in nature, a line in a book, or a memory from childhood. Creativity also requires courage, the courage to challenge the status quo, to risk failure, to try something untested, and to endure the criticism of those who fear change. See Chapter 15. The 14th habit of smart people is lifelong learning, and lifelong learning is not a phase of youth or a requirement of formal schooling, but a continuous commitment to growth, curiosity, and the pursuit of knowledge throughout the entirety of one's life. Because the world never stops evolving, new technologies emerge, cultures shift, discoveries are made, and perspectives expand, and those who stop learning, no matter their age, find themselves falling behind, trapped in outdated thinking, while those who embrace the mindset of a student forever remain adaptable, relevant, and intellectually alive. And this habit of lifelong learning is perhaps the ultimate mark of true intelligence, because it demonstrates humility, the recognition that no matter how much one knows, there is always more to discover, more to understand, and more to refine. And the smart person approaches every day with the awareness that lessons are hidden in every experience, in every conversation, in every success, and especially in every failure. And this openness transforms life itself into a classroom where wisdom is drawn not only from books and teachers, but also from struggles, relationships, and opportunities to reflect. Lifelong learning is not about memorizing facts endlessly or collecting degrees for the sake of pride, but about cultivating a spirit that seeks truth, asks questions, and is willing to be changed by what it learns. And in this way it becomes the habit that sustains all the others, because curiosity without lifelong learning fades, discipline without lifelong learning hardens into rigidity, adaptability without lifelong learning weakens, and creativity without lifelong learning dries up. But when the pursuit of knowledge is carried into every stage of life, the mind stays fresh, the heart stays young, and the spirit stays resilient. And this explains why many of the world's most remarkable individuals continued to study, experiment, and explore until their last days, refusing to accept stagnation as a way of living. Lifelong learning requires intentional practices, such as reading consistently, listening to diverse voices, seeking mentorship, asking thoughtful questions, traveling when possible to encounter new perspectives, and reflecting on one's own experiences to extract meaning. And it also requires the humility to admit ignorance, to say, "I don't know," and to see that statement not as a weakness, but as an invitation to grow, because only those who acknowledge their gaps in knowledge can truly fill them. Smart people also know that lifelong learning is fueled by curiosity rather than obligation, and so they cultivate wonder. They ask why things are the way they are, how they might be different, what lies beyond what is visible, and this questioning spirit keeps the flame of learning alive even when life grows busy or comfortable. They also understand that lifelong learning is most powerful when shared, because teaching others, discussing ideas, and engaging in dialogue not only deepens understanding, but also creates ripples of knowledge that extend beyond the individual to touch families, communities, and even future generations. Lifelong learning also involves flexibility, for the skills and truths that serve one season may not serve the next, and so the learner must be willing to unlearn outdated assumptions, to relearn new frameworks, and to constantly update their mental models to reflect the present reality. And in this sense, lifelong learning is not about accumulation but transformation, a continuous unfolding of greater depth, insight, and wisdom. Ultimately, the habit of lifelong learning ensures that intelligence never grows stale but expands with time, and that a person continues not only to stay sharp in mind but also to remain vibrant in spirit, proving that the true measure of being smart is not how much one knows today, but how willing one is to keep learning tomorrow.